Let us for a few moments meditate on the Divine Lord for peace and happiness of the whole mankind. Om Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmaswarupine Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmaswarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna Te Namah Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God Incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. We are discussing teachings of Sri Ramakrishna taken from the Gospel. Sri Ramakrishna's profound wisdom we find in all his teachings. Simple, direct, very effective. All through Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, we find one emphasis throughout his instructions and guidance, and that is to be practical in your spiritual pursuit. Be spiritual. So, when you start being spiritual, that is the real life you have started. So, Sri Ramakrishna has described how people are suffering on account of their not practicing spirituality, not giving priority to spiritual ways, not very serious about spiritual path. So, suffering is there. People are passing through all sorts of crisis, disharmony, disturbances, so many things, infinite ways. People are passing through intense suffering throughout the world. That is simply because people are not giving attention to the spiritual values. Just concentrate upon what you should do in your life. If every individual concentrates upon the theme, then you see how you can get out of this suffering. Even though you are in the world, you are not tainted by worldliness. The more spiritual you become, the more God-word you become. you come towards God more and more. That means you come to realize your inner nature of purity. Purity is God. So, Sri Ramakrishna has said in his teachings that why people are suffering? Because they have allowed the mind to drift away from spirituality, and mind is allowed to involve in all sorts of unreal things, and so they are being tied down by these involvements of the mind. So because of this, people feel they are suffering. The suffering is because they feel they are bound. So bondage. But then there is a way to get out of this bondage. The opposite of bondage is liberation. If you are really aspiring for liberation, you have to take control of the mind, which is responsible for both bondage and liberation. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example about the nature of the mind. The mind will take the color you dye it with. It is like white clothes just returned from the laundry. If you dip them in red dye, they will be red. If you dip them in blue or green, they will be blue or green. They will take only the color you dip them in, whatever it may be. Haven't you noticed that if you read a little English, you at once begin to utter English words, foot, it, mit, like that? Then you put on boots and whistle a tune and so on. It all goes together. Or if a scholar studies Sanskrit, he will at once begin to utter Sanskrit verses. If you are in bad company, you will talk and think like your company, like your companions. On the other hand, when you are in company of devotees, you will think and talk only of God. So, the mind is everything. Again, Sri Ramakrishna tells, a man has his wife on one side and his daughter on the other. He shows his affection to them in different ways. But his mind is one and the same. So, bondage is of the mind and freedom is also of the mind. So, when the mind is tied to the worldly things, when it is involved in unreal things, bondage is the result. When you release the mind from the clutch of the worldly distractions or allurements, then liberation is the result. So, mind is very important sense organ to be properly dealt with. There's a famous Upanishad. All these spiritual ideas are very clearly described in the Upanishads, which deal with the knowledge of the self, the knowledge of reality, what is real, what is unreal, what is this nature, what is the creation. Everything is very clearly described and clearly points out how one should conduct one's life when he is born in this world. So there is one Upanishad, because I took class on this Upanishad for 2 or 3 years, I think. Amrita Bindu Upanishad is one of the minor Upanishads. The very first verse of this Upanishad is that Manohi dvividam proktam shuddham cha shuddhamevacha ashuddham kama sankalpam shuddham kama vivarjitam mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho bandhaya vishayasaktam muktyair nirvishayam smritam. Beautifully they have put the spiritual ideas in these 2 verses. How true it is when we understand the significance of these verses. It says, mind is said to be of 2 kinds, the pure and the impure. That which is associated with a thought of desire, which is constantly running after desires, then such mind is said to be impure. When the mind is free from desires, when the mind is not pulled by desires, then it is said to be pure. So, mind alone is the cause of bondage or emancipation. That mind which is attracted by objects of sense tends to bondage, while that which is not so attracted to this tends to emancipation. So, everything is clear here. To whatever country we may belong, to whatever community we may belong, to whatever religion we may practice, the truth is this: mind is to be properly dealt with. If the mind is impure, make it pure. The moment it becomes pure, you will understand the glory of your own inner self, spirit. When you realize that truth, you will be free from all types of suffering once and for all. No more suffering. Then you realize everything is like a dream. After realization, you find that whole thing is a dream. So, try to concentrate upon purifying the mind. That's the gist of the Upanishads, which is running to 22 verses. It's available in our bookstore, Amrita Bindu Upanishad. And Sri Ramakrishna has said the same teachings in a very simple way, which I explained earlier. So how Sri Ramakrishna's words are so profound. So if you are really sincere and serious, you will certainly try to practice the spiritual ideas in a humble way, devoting yourself to God. Another profound wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna, how nicely he describes the spiritual ideas through similes. He said, to get butter from milk, what you should do, you must let it set into curd in a secluded spot, in a lonely spot, where it is not disturbed at all. If it is constantly disturbed, then milk won't turn into curd. Next, you must put aside all other duties, sit in a quiet spot and churn the rod. Only then do you get butter. By meditating on God in solitude, mind acquires knowledge, dispassion and devotion. The world is water and the mind milk. If you pour milk into water, they become one. You can't find the pure milk anymore. But turn the milk into curd and churn it into butter, then when that butter is placed in water, it will float. So, practice spiritual discipline in solitude and obtain the butter of knowledge and love. Even if you keep that butter in the water of the world, the two will not mix. The butter will float. These spiritual ideas, so clearly explained by Sri Ramakrishna, we find them again in our Amrita Bindu Upanishad. In another verse, it tells, Dhritamiva payasi nigudham bhute bhute vasati vijnanam satatam mantayitavyam manasa manthana bhutena. It says, the Upanishad says, like the butter hidden in milk, the pure consciousness resides in every one. That ought to be constantly churned out by the churning rod of the mind. If the mind is not controlled, the knowledge that thou art does not manifest itself in it. The butter pervades every particle of the milk in the jar in the unmanifested form before being churned. Pure consciousness is the Atman, the spirit, the essence of knowledge and bliss. Churning out is making manifest by means of constant meditation and discrimination, by the process of rejecting all unreal. See how nicely these spiritual ideas of the Upanishads have been explained by Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel. In fact, the whole Gospel can be considered as Upanishad. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Upanishad, we can call. All the spiritual ideas are given there with so much clarity. Coming to next profound wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna, he says there are three classes of physicians: superior, mediocre and inferior. The physician who feels the patient's pulse and just says to him, take the medicine regularly, that's all he will tell. He belongs to the inferior class. He doesn't care to inquire whether or not the patient has actually taken the medicine. The next type of physician, doctor, the mediocre. He is the one who in various ways persuades the patient to take the medicine and tells him sweetly, "My good man, how will you be cured unless you use the medicine? Take this medicine. I have made it for you myself." But there is another class of physicians. He who, finding the patient stubbornly refusing to take the medicine, forces it down his throat, going so far as to put his knee on the patient's chest, is the best physician. This is the manifestation of the tamas of the physician. It doesn't injure the patient. On the contrary, it does him good. Like the physicians, there are three types of spiritual teachers. One type, inferior type of teacher, he just gives instruction to the disciples and that's all. He makes no inquiries about their progress. The second type, mediocre teacher, for the good of the students, he makes repeated efforts to bring the instruction home to him, persuades him to assimilate it, and shows him love in many other ways. But there is a type of teacher who goes to the length of using force when he finds the student persistently unyielding. Sri Ramakrishna tells, I call that teacher the best one. Again, how this idea has been given in the Upanishad. When I read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, I find all the teachings are nicely formatted from the Upanishads. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna's teachings are authenticating the Upanishadic message. There is one Upanishad called Brahma Vidya Upanishad. It describes the teachers as of three kinds. Trividha acharyaha, chodako, bodhakaschaiva, mokshadascha parasmrtaha. Ityesham trividho jnaya acharyastu mahitale. Chodako darshayen margam, bodhakaha stanamadishet. Mokshadastu parantatvam, yajñatva mritamasnute. These are all minor Upanishads. It takes one spiritual idea and elaborates. This Upanishad tells the Supreme Guru is known as the prompter, the awakener, and the bestower of liberation. The preceptor should be known as of the above three kinds in this world. The prompter would show the pupil the path by pointing out that he should resort to the practice of meditation of the form, I am the Brahman. The awakener will point out to the supreme seat by awakening in the pupil the strong belief indicated by that thou art that. While the bestower of liberation is a transcendent Brahman, the Ishvara, which imparts to him the truth, all is my form, thou wilt attain me, there is not even a speck beyond me, on knowing which one attains immortality. One more wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna, taken from the Gospel. To achieve success in spiritual life, mind should be totally taken out from outside world and be placed totally on the divine. So taking out the mind from the world means renunciation. There are two kinds of renunciation, intense and feeble. Feeble renunciation is a slow process. One moves in a slow rhythm. Intense renunciation is like the sharp edge of a razor. It cuts the bondage of Maya easily and at once. A certain woman said to her husband, "Well, so and so has developed a spirit of great dispassion for the world, but I don't see anything of the sort in you." Then she tells, "That man has 16 wives. He is giving them up one by one." The husband heard all these things. With a towel on his shoulder, he was on his way to take bath in the lake. He said to his wife, "You are crazy. That man who was giving up one by one, he won't be able to give up the world. Is it ever possible to renounce bit by bit? Look, I can renounce. Here I go." He didn't stop even to settle his household affairs. He left home just as he was, the towel on his shoulder, and went away. That is called intense renunciation. That is, mind is totally detached from all external things. No more relations, no more involvements, nothing of any sort. Just to realize the truth, the whole mind was focused on it. Again, I am taking the parallel from the Jabala Upanishad. It says the methodology of renunciation: Brahmacharyam samapya grihi bhavet, grihi bhutva vani bhavet, vani bhutva pravrajet, yadivetartha brahmacharyadeva pravrajet grihadva vanadva, ata punaravrati va sanatako vasnatako va utsannagniragniko va yadahareva viradate dahareva pravrajet. The meaning of this Sanskrit verse you see, in the Hindu tradition, in Indian culture, a student should approach the teacher for spiritual knowledge. First acquiring the knowledge, to know what it is. First hearing, then application. So, the student would go to the teacher, learn everything about spirituality from the teacher. So, as soon as he completes the life of religious student, he shall enter the life of a householder. That is, he will become a family man. After completing the life of a householder, what next? He shall become a forest dweller. That means he should retire to forest and live an ascetic life. After retiring to the forest, what next? He shall renounce. Or if it be otherwise, he can renounce even as a religious student, or as a householder, or as an ascetic, or again as a religious student or not as a religious student, either as a bachelor or not as a bachelor, either after finishing the tending of the household fire or without any fire. If on any day he feels non-attachment to the world, on that very day shall he renounce. That means if a person at certain point of time feels intense dispassion in his heart, then immediately he is qualified to renounce everything and concentrate wholly upon meditating on the reality. So renunciation means simply this: how far your mind is turned towards God. 50%, 60%, 70%. It should become 100%. Then you will have the experience of infinite peace and bliss. That is, you will get into samadhi state when the whole mind, free from all desires, just is totally satisfied at the vision of the divine truth, and the person gets into ecstatic state, and he will be immersed in absolute samadhi. That means his mind is merged into the cosmic consciousness, and he feels in that state tremendous peace and tremendous joy. That is the final stage which everyone should aspire for. When a person realizes that absolute state of peace and joy, that is considered as freedom. Such a person is free from suffering or sorrow, and he really understands the meaning of what is peace and what is joy. Page 731. With the devotees in Calcutta. The devotees seated in the room looked at Sri Ramakrishna as he began to chant the sweet name of the Divine Mother. After the chanting, he began to say, what was the need of prayer to a soul in constant communion with God? Did he not rather want to teach erring mortals how to pray? Addressing the Divine Mother, he said, O Mother, I throw myself on thy mercy. I take shelter at thy hallowed feet. I don't want bodily comforts. I don't crave name and fame. I don't seek the 8 occult powers. Be gracious and grant that I may have pure love for thee, a love unsmitten by desire, untainted by any selfish ends, a love craved by the devotee for the sake of love alone. And again, grant me the favor, O Mother, that I may not be deluded by thy world-bewitching Maya, that I may never be attached to the world, to lust and gold, conjured up by thy inscrutable Maya. O Mother, there is no one but thee whom I may call my own. Mother, I don't know how to worship. I am without austerity. I have neither devotion nor knowledge. Be gracious, O Mother, and out of thy infinite mercy grant me love for thy lotus feet. Every word of this prayer, uttered from the depths of his soul, stirred the minds of the devotees. The melody of his voice and the childlike simplicity of his face touched their hearts very deeply. Girish invited the master to his house, saying that he must go there that very night. Master said, "Don't you think it will be late?" Girish said, "No, sir. You may return any time you like. I shall have to go to the theatre tonight to settle a quarrel there." It was 9 o'clock in the evening when the master was ready to start for Girish's house. Since Balram had prepared supper for him, Sri Ramakrishna said to Balram, "Please send the food you have prepared for me to Girish's. I shall enjoy it there." He did not want to hurt Balram's feelings. As the master was coming down from the second floor of Balram's house, he became filled with divine ecstasy. He looked as if he were drunk. Narayan and M were by his side. A little behind came Ram, Shuni, and other devotees. No sooner did he reach the ground floor than he became totally overwhelmed. Narayan came forward to hold him by the hand, lest he should miss his footing and fall. The master expressed annoyance at this. A few minutes later he said to Narayan affectionately, "If you hold me by the hand, people may think I am drunk. I shall walk myself." Giri's house was not far away. The master passed the crossing at Bhojpara Lane. Suddenly he began to walk faster. The devotees were left behind. Presently Narendra was seen coming from a distance. At other times the master's joy would have been unbounded at the thought of Narendra or at the mere mention of his name, but now he did not even exchange a word with his beloved disciple. As the master and the devotees entered the lane where Girish lived, he was able to utter words. He said to Narendra, "Are you quite well, my child? I could not talk to you then." Every word the master spoke was full of infinite tenderness. He had not yet reached the door of Giri's house when suddenly he stopped and said, looking at Narendra, "I want to tell you something. This is one and that is another." Who could know what was passing through his innermost soul at that moment? Girish stood at the door to welcome the master. As Sri Ramakrishna entered the house, Girish fell at his feet and lay there on the floor like a rod. At the master's bidding, he stood up, touching the master's feet with his forehead. Sri Ramakrishna was taken to the drawing room on the second floor. The devotees followed him and sat down, eager to get a view of the master and listen to every word that fell from his lips. We shall stop here. Any questions you are welcome to ask. So, if you want to enjoy happiness, you must know how to deal with your mind. That's all the subject matter of today. When once the mind gets out of control, it is rather very difficult to deal with it later on. And you will not be able to do it also because of so many factors. But if you try sincerely, it should be possible to organize yourself. Controlling the mind means controlling your thoughts. minimizing your desires, confining yourself to those desires which are very essential, and try to practice contentment. But all these things will become easy only when you are able to pray, offer worship, and do meditation for a while on a regular basis. Then slowly you will be able to control the mind. So it's easy and difficult both. It's easy, it becomes easy when you strive sincerely and seriously. Otherwise it becomes difficult. Any question? Yeah? You want to ask something? It is true, but you have to take control of the desires. You have to find out some method of drawing yourself out of the mess. The point is, there is no end for the running of the mind. It keeps on running and running. The moment you allow the mind to run, it runs without any exhaustion. So you have to put a limit to your activities. That's what I said, you have to organize your thinking power. You must plan nicely, just as you plan for doing things in the job. Same way you have to plan yourself to keep the mind in proper shape. And one way is to get into spiritual activity so that mind is placed in a healthy way, and to that extent mind is not distracted. Of course, one has to practice spiritual values, and one must start with determination and willpower. Then it is possible. Because the world is like that. It always pulls you at greater speed. So, if the mind is weak, then the mind is pulled away totally. If the mind is strong, then you can resist the pulling. The spiritual mind is always there with everyone. But since we have not given any attention for developing that spiritual mind, so we are always in trouble with the non-spiritual mind. The non-spiritual mind has become hyperactive. Spiritual mind is almost in the dormant state. So, suffering. Anything else? We should stop. Chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name streamed down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself, O self, drowned deep in the waves of His bliss, tasting His nectar at every step, bathing in His name that bought for weary souls. Various are thy names, O Lord. In each and every name thy power resides. No times are set, no rites are needful for chanting of thy name. So vast is thy mercy, how huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. O my mind, be humbler than a blade of grass. Be patient and forbearing like a tree. Take no honor to thyself, give honor to all. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue. The playthings of lust or the toys of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. a drowning man in this world's fearful ocean. He is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy, consider him as dust beneath thy feet. Ah, how I long for that day when an instant's separation from thee, O Lord, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at thy feet let me be, in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. O thou, who stillest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. May all be free from dangers, may all realize what is good, may all be actuated by noble thoughts, may all rejoice everywhere. May all be happy, may all be free from disease, may all realize what is good, may none be subject to misery. May the wicked become virtuous, may the virtuous reign tranquility, may the tranquil be free from bonds, may the freed make others free. May good betide all people, may the sovereign righteously rule the earth, may all beings ever attain what is good, may the worlds be prosperous and happy. May the clouds pour rain in time, may the earth be blessed with crops, may all countries be freed from calamity, may holy men live without fear. May the Lord, the destroyer of sins, the presiding deity of all sacred works, be satisfied, for he being pleased, the whole universe becomes pleased. He being satisfied, the whole universe feels satisfied.